Happy Friday, ACSE. So as a space nerd introducing a fighter pilot, I was afforded some creative liberty. So, Major General Pete Gersten entered the Air Force in 1989 as a graduate of the U.S. Air Force Academy. He's a command pilot with more than 2,800 total flying hours and more than 400 combat hours over Iraq, Syria, Afghanistan, and Bosnia. General Gersten has commanded at the squadron, group, and wing level, and as of note, the Air Force's first remotely piloted aircraft wing and air expeditionary wing commander. He deployed as the Deputy Commander, Operations and Intelligence, Combined Joint Task Force, Operation Inherent Resolve, and as the Commander, 9th Air Force Expeditionary Task Force Levant. Prior to his current assignment, he was the Deputy Assistant Secretary for Programs, leading a staff of military and civilians in the development, integration, evaluation, and analysis of Air Force programs across the FIDEP. General Gersten is currently the Director of Strategic Plans, Office of the Deputy Chief of Staff for Strategic Plans and Requirements, Headquarters, U.S. Air Force. In this role, he is responsible for the development, analysis, evaluation, and integration of the resource allocation plan to meet worldwide airspace and cyber requirements. His directorate also analyzes Air Force core mission areas and reviews legislation, policy, and operations as they relate to the total force to create a more unified regular Air Force, Air National Guard, and Air Force Reserve. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the ACSC stage Major General Pete Guns Gersten.
Seats please, seats please. Even that bored me.
Hey.
Thanks, Jada. Hey, afternoon, everybody. Hey, Jed, thanks for the introduction there. I like the first part better than the second part. It's the combat-laced part of that in my current job now that in the staff building in the Pentagon, I would tell you, is a whole different world. And we're going to talk a little bit about that world today. So what happened essentially, to bring you up to speed, is a little bit ago, your commander, General Quast and Trash, contacted me and said, hey, Guns, would you be interested in coming on down to ACSC and talk to the team and kind of tell them, you know, what the planning, programming, and budget execution cycle is like in the DC? And I go, sure, sounds good to me. I'll come down, you know, see the team, sounds good. And he goes, it's going to be Friday at 3 o'clock. Dude, are you shitting me? And I'm like, really? What, suicide mission? All right. So I go, okay, I can do this. So did some time in the fighter school, went to fighter weapons school, and the standard briefing was 50 minutes. And I learned this in my first briefing at weapons school, and I was doing BFM 2. When my instructor walks in, and he goes, dude, you're under a lot of pressure right now. There's a lot of people talking. You talk fast, but you don't talk fast enough. There's a lot to cover. So he pulls out a beer. He says, hey. He says, yeah, the good beer too. And he says, at 50 minutes, 50 minutes, I'm opening this beer, if it's still here. And so basically he goes, you got 50 minutes to keep talking. At 50 minutes, I'm opening that beer, okay, from now. I'm talking for 20 minutes, and then you're asking questions for 25, 30 minutes max, and then they're gonna hear a popping noise, and I'm walking out of here, okay? So let's get through this, all right? Planning, programming, budget, execution. If I'm going to brief this, you all should have one of those. Slide. All right, hit that button. Play this right here. Boom. Here we go. Deputy Commander, CJTF OIR. This occurred February. I was commander on the night mission. First strike into Mosul's heavily compressed banking industry. This is a bank, and what you see coming out of this $400 million strike, single bank. Look at the money and the crap coming out of the top. That's cash, people. That's cash and records that ISIL can't use to go into Paris and Belgium and go out to hate across the world, that cancerous sons of bitches they are. That's what that was about. Slide. Why is that important to this briefing? Nothing to do with this briefing at all. But that is one cool-ass video. It's one of my proudest moments as a DCOM out there, and had a little bit of money to things, so we'll talk about this one. All right, let's get to this. It's going to be fast and furious. Planning, program, budget, execution is a very complicated system. Slide. Otherwise known as the Pentagon for Dummies. You guys are the dummies. How many of you guys have actually been, how many have been stationed in the Pentagon, DC area? Yeah, a minority. So I kind of figured that. So let me break it down for you. Slide, please. I pulled this definition off of the website about the Air Force in the Pentagon and its relationship. The Pentagon is an extensive city where the nation's most powerful reside. The Pentagon is also a colloquial name for ruling government of the Air Force, seat of power of the Air Force, servicing 10 MAGCOMs, directed from the city to organize resources from it. Pentagon holds the total political and economic oversight of the Air Force, enforcing the rule throughout the Army of Staff Officers. Pretty clear? Makes sense? You all buy that? Raise your hand if you buy it. Okay, looks good. Next slide. I actually pulled this from the definition of Panem. It's the exact same definition of Panem from Hunger Games. I'm like, isn't that weird? Panem City from Hunger Games is the Pentagon? Yeah, and you guys are the districts? Yep, that's the way it works. All right, let's do this. Next slide. All right. Planning, programming, budgeting, execution. It's a cycle. It's actually under revision right now. They decided that because it doesn't include strategy, they're calling it S-PBBE or SP3, strategy, planning and programming, execution, or PBE. The bottom line, it's how we plan, execute the funding of your United States Air Force in relation to our other services. Slide. It looks a little like this, and I'm going to spend about the next 40 minutes to 3 hours talking about strategy cycles as it goes to the Air Force, strategic support plan, planning choices, resource allocation, plans, programs, presidential oversight, and national military strategy. I'm going to break each of these down in about 5 or 10 minutes. I'm going to ask you questions along the way. Then we're going to have a quiz on Monday to bring it back to you guys. Okay. Slide. That's complete crap. This is what it is. This is all it is, guys. This is all you need to take away from the PPBE. It's in 4 pieces. Simple. We assess the environment we live in now and where we're going through a series of models and whatnot. We take that assessment and we lay it into a 30-year plan. This 30-year plan starts at the 5 years out point and goes to 30 years. And then we program it, which means we put money against it. And this goes from 1 year to 5 years. And then we execute that budget, and that's what you guys do every single day. That's 0 now for 1 year. So it's simple. 1 year, 5 years out. 5 years to 30 years. And we assess it. One thing to take away about the substance of the briefing, that's as simple as the PBE process is. I'm going to break them open just a little bit so you have a better understanding, and then we're going to talk about some other stuff. Slide. Assess. Slide. Here we go. It takes the national military strategy, talk about the environment. This is kind of the ends we look for, and we put them against all these different parts of the Air Force in the assessment. We take in different, the 4+1 or 4+2 now, as we call it, or 4+1+1. We take a capacity from like tankers and fighters and ISR. We take away costs. We take away environment. We take away basing. We take away logistics. We take all of these things, and we're trying to basically forecast a crystal ball of the future. We put them in the Air Force's model called STORM, which is a gigantic piece of FOD, honestly. It's a computer system that just can't quite hang with today's modeling and sim requirements. I'll be completely honest with you. It's a no retribution, right? Or am I being filmed? All right. No one here from, the copies there? So bottom line is it's not a good model. So if it's not a good model, we have a hard time forecasting the future. And that's going to come back to bite us in a second. I'll talk about that. We put it through the model, and we kick ourselves out through the warfighting risk analysis, and we present what is our best guess on the future. It comes out in things like this slide. Yeah, for example, the A2AD slide. How A2AD picks capabilities. We look at the adversaries, the requirements, the long range, and it comes up with a bumper sticker that says, hey, you need to invest and buy back your precision, survival, lethality. We're just trying to make a best guess, guys. The assessment is a very simple process. It's very complicated to get the answer. You want to be as right as possible. We're not quite equipped with the right modeling and sim capability to get us there, and we know it. We're trying to get to it, but the world's a rapidly changing place. But this is our best guess on it. Slide. Boom. Gather key inputs, campaign level analysis, outputs then are handed directly to the planners. And then the planners, this is where we take over in that 30-year plan. Plans, slide. Here we go, slide. Simple enough. We take what the assessment world gives us, we then break it down through all the documents for what we have to do, our ends. We have to, the national military strategy, we're responsible for. And we read these documents in their pristine parts, and then we look at how we take all of the elements of the Air Force's capability, global vigilance, reach, and power, how they fit in as partners in the joint world, and who's covering who, on that joint interoperability or joint intercapability, and then we lay them into what we do, build a strategic master plan, and then we basically lay it out on a 30-year program. Okay, it's another best guess with it. I'll talk about the dynamics as it goes back out, but it's as simple as that. I build a 5-year best look out to a 30-year best look. And I have to stay within, at this point, the assessment, this unbridled assessment that I was given, I have to financially confine it now. Now I have to put a financial boundary on it. I can no longer head off the sides. I have to start getting into what we call the funnel. Slides. This is the result of the plan. The United States Air Force has a top line, total obligation authority of about $120 billion, okay? We break it down through the plan, and we break it through the corporate, basically stakeholders. Each part of our Air Force is broken down into a core function lead, agile combat support, special operations, personnel recovery, C2, they're all listed there. And we account for every capability we have in the Air Force and every program is binned in that particular order, and then we stack them up there. My job as a planner is to take that unbridled requirement and get it into the $120 billion box. Now, in reality, that line actually climbs a little bit because it's got some inflation to it, but that's how we break it down. And then we fight. We fight amongst how the different sand charts come back up, and that's where the preponderance of work is at, to get that plan set. Here's the problem. This is what I have to do. Slide. This is what I'm given as far as the requirement. Next slide, please. Remember 120? Next slide takes us to, this is 120. This is unfunded. This is the stuff that I was given to do. And I have to get it inside there. So next slide. So this is the total problem I have to solve every year for plans across 30 years. I have to stay below the red line. Look how much other stuff we have to get to. And these are validated requirements. So everything above that line that I do not do is simply translated as risk. Risk, risk, risk. And that is the biggest problem. We are, $50 billion across per year disconnected. I'm going to talk specifically about that problem as it faces us right now and tell us why we got there and things we can do to get out of it. That's a formidable challenge in the planning process. Slide. Okay, simple enough. We take the guidance from the assessments. We take the inputs from those core service plan providers. We build a 30-year plan. We make hard choices. Or do we make hard choices? Or have we failed to make hard choices? Talk about that in a second. Slide. Let's go on. Take the plan now and kick it back to the programmers. Now I got to get serious about it. I got to get very tight on this one. I have to come in perfectly balanced. Slide. The programmers pick up the ball. Slide, please. They pick up the ball in this 5-year point right here, the 5 years, and they do a series of harder choices in the narrower part of the funnel to bring in a series of 4-star vector checks, the program objective memorandum final. They tighten up, and get themselves all the way in to the final, what's called approval for the SECAF, and then we submit our budget down here. It's about a 6-month grinding out process that gets us to get us to balance. That was my first job when I got back from CJTF. I built the 18 program 5-year, and it was formidable. And then at the end of November, we put it in a trash can and grinded it up and starting over now because we have a new administration. So we have to start all over again. I'll talk about that problem. Slide. Okay. Here is the problem, like I talked about. Today, what we have to do today, this is the FIDEP, it's called, the 5-year plan that the planners have to, the programmers live in. This is where the planners live. They live out here. And we have a certain tolerance. You have to be near zero deviation. So this is $120 billion. I have to stay, at the very execution, I have to be balanced. The mandates from the SecDef had that line flat across, which means I have to balance. Remember that flat line chart? I have to balance the whole thing. Slide, please. I have to balance the whole thing flat at this $120 billion line. But I have to forecast 30 years out and be plus or minus zero. That's the mandate that we get from our OSD. And we just push back and say we can't do it because it looks like that stack on top. I got to get things in the funnel. I got to get my strategy guys that are building programs and they're bringing them back in. I got to get near. If I'm not near, I have a problem. And it looks like this. Slide. Here's the problem right now. 5 largest programs in the United States Air Force by capacity. B-21, F-35, Space Enterprise Vision, KC-46, and GBSD. That's their disconnects outside the funnel. And they're just outside the FIDEP, except for this week on Wednesday, the service cost plan came in for the B-21 and said, Guns, sorry to tell you this, we're inside the FIDEP, we're inside the funnel. As far as time, we're right here, and we are $2 billion disconnected in the last 2 years for a total of $4 billion inside of the FIDEP. I'm like, your knees buckle. I have to find $2 billion in a budget I've already submitted to the president. And then $5 billion disconnected every year out. So every year after that, it's $5 billion out disconnected. That's one. KC-46 is $38 billion disconnected. GBSD, ground-based strategic defense, $60 billion disconnected. Here's the funny story. The closest program executing towards the funnel is our F-35. And you go, that's the good program, guys. And so the problem we're faced with now is I have these problems just outside the FIDEP lurking at us as an Air Force. Individually, each of these programs could crush our budget. B-21, solving that B-21 problem is going to be a problem. Slide. Inside the funnel, I have programs that are right on the edge. They're right on the edge to break. I got the chief talking about 350,000 airmen. I got a new trainer for the T-38. I got an A-10 replacement. I got an MQ-9 replacement. I got CSAR-X and our FXX next generation fighter. They're all broken. They're all outside the FIDEP. And we're trying to articulate that to our leadership that, sir, we just don't have the top line. And we were kind of promised we were going to get a bump on our top line, and it's not there. This is the reality of today that I left the building with yesterday that came down here. It is a formidable problem. People talk about bow waves. Hey, the new guys are bringing a bow wave in, or the space guys are bringing a bow wave in. I refer to this as the bow wall. Because next year, when we build next, all those programs are going to trip, and I'm going to be disconnected $20 to $40 billion. That chart, that sand chart in the upper right. And I have to find an extra 1/3 of my budget, the Air Force's total budget, to fit those programs in. If not, then what do we do? Slide. There's the program. And then once basically you're done with the program, okay, you go to budget and execution. Can you guys run the video? Budget and execution, next one. Next slide, please. This is budget and execution. Really simple. I made a little video for you guys. I hope you enjoy it.
Woo.
This is
you
the
sure
budget.
gotta climb a lot of steps to get to this Capitol building here in Washington. Well, I wonder who that sad little scrap of paper is.
That's the budget.
I'm just a bill. Yes, I'm only a bill. And I'm sitting here on Capitol Hill. Well, it's a
take it down.
long journey to the capital city. It's a long wait while I'm sitting in
stop the
committee.
video. Bring it
But
back
I
up.
know I'll be a law someday.
Thank you. How many guys have seen that one before? Okay. No kidding. That is the budget cycle. Replace bill with budget. It goes into Congress. Next slide. Next, give me 2 slides up. You submit the budget, it goes into Congress, they argue about it, they tell you what's wrong with it. It goes through a series of panels and committees and HASCs and SASCs and HIPSIs and SISIs. It literally is, I'm just a bill. At the very end, hopefully, the president signs it and you're a law, is what it comes out to be. We have not had that happen in like 7 years. Okay? We're on continuation and continuation and continuation. We've never made it, the little budget paper gets to the end and it never makes it, and we end up in some sort of continuation plan where we can't do long-range planning and programming. But that's a simple part of it. We got to get it done. Slide. Okay. We build a budget, we defend that budget, we send it to Congress, they tell us that we're wrong, they mark it, tell us how to spend money, tell us to go buy more A-10s, and we keep going. All right, slide. So there it is, guys. Really fast and simple. It's not that complicated until you actually do it. The big modules, assess it, plan for it in 30 years, budget it for 5 years, submit it, and I'm just a bill. Pray for it to get through and become a law. If not happens, it goes back around. Slide. The trick, slide please. The trick is, at any given time, we're doing this 4 times simultaneously. So the 17 budget is right now, should be in execution, but it's not. because they were an NDA hold. So we haven't actually sold the 17 budget, and we're in 17. So we can't spend the money we have to spend. So we're on a continuation plan. Meanwhile, we're trying to articulate what our 17 budget is. 6 months into the budget, we're rebuilding the 18 simultaneously, planning for 19, and basically strategizing 20 and beyond to get that 30-year plan. They're always sequentially going on. So there's a lot of stuff going on inside that building. Slide. This is what I told you. This complicated piece of junk right here that you eventually come to the building and have to understand. And it's important you understand it, because if you don't know where the money's spent, you'll be disadvantaged in the entire conversation. That's where it comes from in those 4 basic pieces. Slide. The current environment. I talked a little bit about the current environment in the funnel right now. Slide. Remember this? 4 things going on simultaneously. There's a plan, there's a program, there's execution. Because of what happened with the election year in November, they held the 17 from being signed, so it did not get to signature. The bill didn't make it to the president for the signing. Simultaneously, this administration, new administration, took the plan that was built. Whoosh, doesn't work for us. Rebuild me a new one and change the assumptions. Simultaneously, we have to build the 19 on top of it and then strategize for 20. So really, slide. This is what's going on right now. Everything is occurring on that whole slide in June, July, August of this year. Building 17 again, building 18 again, building 19, 3 simultaneously in strategizing between July and November timeframe. What could possibly go wrong? Think about the compression that what we take basically 4 years and jam it into 3.5 months. And we're waiting, we don't even have the answer right now. We have a little bit of the answer right now we think we got yesterday about what 17 looks like. And we were kind of promised some bigger numbers, and we're not going to get those numbers. And now we have to revalidate where we're going to go for a future. Slide. So, kind of the current state of the Air Force. If you guys get a chance to read, the Chief of Staff came out and maybe talk to you about where his thought process was. This was part of his 2017 narrative that we built for him. Talked about, we've been constantly at work, fighting the VEOs. We got a resurging Russia and China. This is the starting, back in the 80s. Our end strength has come down to a point where we've ridden our successes on the backs of our airmen and our operations deployment tempo, and we've basically been fighting a war nonstop for 20 years. Meanwhile, people are starting to vote with their feet. The threat itself on the China, their gross domestic product, their GDP is starting to accelerate. It'll pass ours in about 5 years. Their GDP as they pay towards the military. Therefore, they'll have a financial advantage over the top of us. And meanwhile, our combat Air Force fleet, we haven't bought a plane in quantity since 1982, I think it was. We used to buy about 110 planes a year. We buy in quantities of 5 now. And that drives the average age of the fleet up to 27 years, so about 21 of our platforms qualify for antique plates. So we're tired, we're old and worn out at this point, and we're looking for a recapitalization plan. And put the funnel in your mind, what the funnel looks like. How do we recapitalize when everything's on the edge of the funnel? Slide. The bow waves. I talked about the readiness piece. That upper left-hand chart is where the manpower is coming down. That's where you hear the chief saying, hey, we need 350,000 airmen to get to readiness. We have this huge excess infrastructure. We have bases like Grand Forks that are bases that do nothing for us, except for we had to pay for them to maintain. 25%, it's actually more like 35% of our Air Force inventory is stagnant and not used. The nuclear investment on basically our future, that's a picture of what's called the bow wave. Take those other 5 programs and stack it on top. The bow wave, the space bow wave, and basically the combat squadrons, not to mention the MAF KC-46 bow wave. All those bow waves are coming together about us. So we have to solve the problem. Slide. So, 25 minutes. Hack. We talked a little bit about the process. I don't want to belabor it on a Friday afternoon about what the PB is, but that's what that is. And then the current state of affairs and how we get to those problems. I'm going to stop talking now, okay? Let you guys ask questions and see what's on your mind, because I think I have how much time before I got to pop this? Go. Yep. Were you just late to your seat, or you?